All right. Good morning, everyone. Hello. I love all the green. Thanks for showing up, everyone. Thank you to our families, our staff, our neighbors, and Superintendent Segura for being here today. Your presence speaks to the strength of this community and the deep care we share for our school and for our children's learning. As an authorized IB World School, we believe in inquiry, reflection, and principled action. We encourage our students to ask thoughtful questions, to consider multiple perspectives, and to stand up for what they believe is right, even when the conversations are complex. Today's meeting gives our community an opportunity to do the same, to listen, to engage, and to share our experiences as part of an open, honest dialogue about the future of our school. Today we have 90 minutes set aside for this meeting. I will now turn it over to Ali Garaducci to review the agenda and meeting norms, if that has not happened. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. And before I get started, I just want to make a quick announcement about the availability of interpretation.
Good morning, I'm Vic. I'm one of your interpreters today, so I'm going to make a quick announcement in Spanish in case there's anybody that would be interested in having interpretation into Spanish. Buenos días, yo soy Vic, soy uno de los intérpretes al español. Esta reunión va a ser interpretada al español. Si alguien desea interpretación al español, vengan con nosotros, estamos ahí atrás con mi colega Héctor. Les damos unos audífonos para interpretarles la reunión en español. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. And if we don't have anyone in person, we are, just so everyone knows, recording this in English and Spanish. So when we do get to Q&A, we want to make sure everyone's speaking into the mic so that everything is captured, okay? If we can go to the next slide. Or do you have the clicker, Rachel? Sorry. Or do I have the clicker? I have the clicker. So sorry. There we go. So we are, like I said, I'm going to go over the meeting norms and purpose. We'll go ahead and introduce who we have here to answer any questions that y'all might have. And then from there, we had planned to do an overview of kind of what's on the table from that initial October 3rd proposal, as well as a new option that was discussed for the first time last night at the board meeting. So we can kind of talk through that alternative and what the trade-offs might be if we were to consider that direction. And then we have pulled some questions from the comment card that came up frequently, and so we've prepared those. But I know that we're going to have a facilitator that's going to kind of go over questions, so we can either kind of go back and forth, or if you already have questions, we're really flexible on how we manage that. So for our meeting norms, I just want to remind everyone what we're here to do is to build the future together. We want to acknowledge the challenges of our current situation while focusing on ideas and solutions that make our district stronger, more equitable, and sustainable for years to come. We want to try and honor time, so we're hoping that when we do get to the Q&A, if people can make an effort to kind of keep their questions around a minute, that we can make maximum time for as many speakers as possible, and we will try to do the same with our responses, but we're not that great at it, so if you need to remind us. We're going to try to honor the process, so just sticking with the agenda to stay on track. We want to honor intent and impact, so we know that there may be things that we are not going to agree on, but we hope that we can all go with the assumption that everyone is here for the same reason, is that we have a shared goal of having strong, equitable schools for all of our students. We want to honor space and voice, so we do ask if you do speak one time, we'd like to make sure that anyone else who hasn't spoken gets that opportunity before we go back to the same person. We'd like to try and stay solution-oriented, so focusing on ideas, solution, and understanding. And we are here to embrace transparency and empathy. We recognize how difficult these conversations are, and we want to meet them with compassion, clarity, and honesty. So if there's any time where maybe we answer a question of yours and maybe you don't feel like we fully answered what you were asking, it's okay to kind of ask for follow-up to make sure we get that clarity for y'all. All right? And did you want us to go through the scenarios real quick, or how do you want to? Okay, perfect. So then we're going to go ahead and run through what is proposed, and I'm going to let our, I'm sorry, I didn't go over the purpose, but essentially we want to make sure that we are responding to all the questions that were submitted via comment card, as well as any follow-up questions y'all may have. Our aim is just to gain shared understanding of what are the proposed changes and the rationale behind them, as well as this new option that we're talking about, or any other ideas that you want us to discuss. And then really our goal is to gain insights that could inform potential refinements to the draft before the November 20 board vote. And so I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent to kind of give some opening remarks around the why before we briefly go over the scenarios on the table and then get to the Q&A.
Thank you, Allie. Thank you to the Bryker Woods community for kind of showing up the way that you do. This is precisely what we want in Austin ISD. We want families and communities that advocate for their school. I can tell you, in my experience here, living here, growing up here, being a product of Austin ISD, I've been in places where community or families don't show up, and that's hard. And so what it demonstrates is just your love for public education, your love for your schools and your students. And if you're here, I'm going to be here. I will always be here to engage with you, learn, improve, refine. I also want to acknowledge this is a really tough spot. I want to acknowledge the pain, the disruption that this has caused in your families' lives, in your students' lives. It's not lost on me. We are one large community. There are lots of things happening in Austin ISD. So I just wanted you to know that it's hard. It really is hard, and I appreciate y'all showing up and having this conversation with me. So how we got here, I think is worth having a brief conversation, because I want you to know kind of all the things that kind of played into what we're trying to do as an organization. Since I've come on board, one of the things that I've realized is that this organization, AISD, has gotten to where we are, where we're not providing what we need to every student within Austin ISD, the over 70,000 students, because of a series of decisions that have been made over the last 144 years. I mean, that's the honest truth. And when we think about where we want to go as an organization and kind of my role at this moment, it's really about how do we address the things that are in our bones that have led to inequities in our school system. How do we break practices that move students away from AISD opposed to into Austin ISD? And for us as a school district, what I tell people is we have to make sure that every student gets what they need, period. And the honest truth is right now I don't have the ability to do it. I just don't. We are an inch deep and a mile wide when it comes to resources. I'm not going to get into the history. Y'all know it. Y'all know the pressures that we have either at the federal level or at the state level, the lack of funding, the disruptions that we've experienced over the last couple years. I mean, these are things that we are having to navigate and make real-time decisions on, and it's impacting lives in our community. And so as we move forward, I talk about strong neighborhood schools, and I want to be really clear, like Bryker Woods is a strong neighborhood school. There's no doubt. And when we talk about strong neighborhood schools, you see it when you walk the classrooms. I mean, it's not about students that can pass a test. It's about students who love learning. That's what we want. We want students who feel comfortable in their own skin. We want students who view being bilingual as a superpower. Like, these are the things we want for our students. We want them to advocate for themselves. There's attitudes that we want, and if we do it our way, we can protect how we do it. So at this moment, as we think about trying to get to a place where we do have strong neighborhood schools throughout Austin ISD, we know right now that doesn't exist. There are parts of Austin that simply don't have the resources because we as a district for decades have failed to provide them. And so this plan attempts to address much of this all at once. And that's where the complexity comes in. So I'm going to just kind of lay out a couple things because I want you to know where we were coming from when this plan developed. First and foremost, we really wanted to consider and get to a place where we had aligned feeder patterns in Austin ISD. There's a reason why you can go to Murkison and see students that have a Trojan hat on for Anderson, or go to O'Henry and see students that have a maroon shirt on for Austin High. That's what you want. Keep community together, have them move through the feeder pattern, programs align, friends stay together. That does not happen everywhere in Austin ISD. We have middle schools that go to 4 and 5 high schools. Think about the disruption that creates in our community. So that was one of the things we tried to accomplish with this comprehensive plan. The second thing we wanted to address was this reality that our transfer policies, the way that they've been built out and kind of continue to operate within our system, have led to movement within our organization that is just not supporting our values. And so we're tackling that. Some of it has to do with how we manage internally or operationalizing of the transfer policies, and some of it's the policies themselves. So we're taking and refining those, and you'll see those in the plans. The third thing that we're really trying to address was the cost of operating a large system. We have 116 schools in Austin ISD right now, and we have a little over 70,000 students. In 1996, we had about 73,000 students and 96 schools. And so as the city has grown, we grew in parts of Austin, northwest, southwest, southeast, you know where those areas are. In other parts of Austin, there's gentrification, affordability challenges that our families experience, and we've seen families move. And I will tell you, because I hear this all the time, well, charters have had a role in that, they've taken, well, I will tell you that our position in the public education space has largely remained stable. There are lots of school districts, and different entities, trying to compete for students, but we have been able to kind of hold our position. But the total number of students that live in Austin, the birth rates, the housing, all these things have put pressure on us, and we just have fewer students. That's just the honest truth. And so we tried to address that through boundary changes and consolidations, right, to where we could get to a place where we had a lower number of facilities that we could operate and maintain, because that's the same budget that we use for compensation and programming. The other thing that we attempted to do in this plan is to align programs in Austin ISD to ensure they're sustainable. We talk about wall-to-wall dual language, and we in Austin ISD lean into dual language. There are school districts all around us who are leaning out of dual language. And so the programs are intended to support emergent bilingual students. That's the focus, but we saw year over year a downward trend in those students in those programs. And so to provide access, we need to move those programs to where they are. And I would say lastly, we had to be mindful of the turnaround plans and the accountability risk that's been shifting into our feet for the last many years. In 2022, we had, 13 B schools that then turned into F schools in 2023. Same students, same teachers. Right, think about that. You have a school who was a B in 22 who's now an F the next year. And so when you think about where we are as an organization, we have to address that. We have to be responsive to it, because if we're not, then we get to a place where we could potentially lose control of our ability to educate our students our way. And you can see just our sister school district, North in North Texas, going through it right now. And so this is a complex plan. There are lots in it. I know we're here and we're going to talk about Bryker Woods and how we got to this specific solution in the plan. It is a draft plan. Things will refine. This conversation is very helpful, I promise you. So I just wanted to share all that and then hand it over, because we do have questions, but I really want y'all to create the space to us to have answer the questions. So thank you for the time, and I look forward to the dialogue.
Thank you so much. Do you want to take this mic? Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Segura. Can I call you Matthias, or should we go?
You should only call me Matthias.
Okay. Just wanted to get the lay of the land. Thank you, guys. This is such a great turnout. This shows just what a strong, passionate community that we have. It honestly brings tears to my eyes to see everyone out there cheering and chanting and singing. Before we get into the questions with Matthias, we are finally getting to have a collective voice for the community, but we also wanted to have a voice for the local businesses that this will impact. So Lindsay Hanna, a community member, is going to come up. She's been doing some great work with our local businesses, and she's just going to say a few words about that.
Hi. Good morning. Thank you for being here, Matthias. I'm sorry, that's really hard for me to just say Matthias, but I will. Okay. Thank you all for being here. I am wearing a Bryker Woods hat. I've worn a lot of hats at Bryker Woods. I've worn a parent hat for 12 years, and next year would be my lucky 13 for our last Panther. Margot's in 4th grade this year. But we are all taking different parts on about this issue. And one of the things I felt like was really important to display was just how rooted this school is in the neighborhood and the surrounding business community. I myself am a small business owner in the community. I live in Bryker Woods and my office is in Rosedale, also a community that goes to Bryker Woods. So my thought is that we really need them to be represented. It will significantly change and impact not just this little pocket of Austin, but beyond if the school ceases to exist. The reimagining of it, I can't even think of what it might be. And that, these businesses, there's a little kind of group of small counselors that are across the street. They each have individual offices right there. There's a dermatology office, Wells Fargo. I didn't talk to them yet, but I will. This is a list of businesses, including Kirby Lane, whom you heard from Mason Ayers earlier, who came to Bryker Woods as a student. Every time I talked to one of these businesses, they had just another story that almost made me cry every time. I don't need your stories too. I can't collect them all. It's hard. It's really, really crazy how connected this school is to Austin. And I am just happy to have them as partners in this and supporters. And this list keeps growing every day. This is literally something that I started 2 weeks ago. And we, our resources are thin, so I still have to work, and Halloween's coming. We got to make the costumes. So anyway, I just wanted to, the businesses are here with us. We're partnering with them, and they've given us a lot, and we frequent their, we are their livelihood too. We are parents. We are alumni. All right within this little zone. So thank you. Thank you for being here, everyone.
Okay, so just for some introductions, my name's Melissa Brown. I'm a parent here. I think this is my 9th year at Bryker Woods. I associate my identity to this school, to be honest. So I'm happy to be up here to moderate. I'm here with Rob Henze. He has 2 children. One is in 4th grade here, and one is now at O. Henry. And then to round out our advocacy group, Jennifer Robertson is president of our PTA. She's been fighting hard for us as well. And then Teal Pennebaker, who just spoke at the rally, she's been a driving force for us as well. So we are here to represent the community, and we're going to be asking questions on behalf of the community. We have polled our neighborhood association, we've polled internally the parents, and we've really tried to aggregate it down to some really clear, concise questions that we just really love to get some answers on. So I'm just going to kick it off with the first kind of high-level question. You just spoke really well on the systemic issues that AISD has been facing. I think the whole community has a ton of empathy for you in the position that you're in with the threat of TEA and the turnaround schools. I mean, that is just not an easy thing to tackle. And so we support fully your plans around all the turnaround situations. In terms of closures, though, everyone in our community is very confused why Bryker Woods would be on this list. We are high performing. We have a specialty program in the IB that has been data proven to only help enrollment for the district going forward. We have land to expand. Our enrollment is growing. We are a staple. It's a true neighborhood school, like you mentioned. I know that you value that, and we really are a true neighborhood school that brings a community together. We host church. We host all that. So because of all that, and knowing the systemic situation that you're facing, why Bryker Woods?
So I'll start and then hand over to Rachel or Dr. French. So when we started this process, because I'm going to start with the second question, you said high performing. There is no doubt that Bryker Woods is high performing. When we started this process, we wanted to be really clear that we weren't going to use accountability to drive the decision-making process, because if we did that, then you'd only be closing DNF schools. Right, and you think about, well, what did we as a school district not provide to those schools that led to those outcomes? Right, we as a school district are, producing the outcomes because of who we are, and so that's why it didn't drive. It wasn't, this school's an A, this school's a B, this school's a C. We're going to go in that order. It was really based on the process that we developed, pulling the data, And for us as an organization, when you think about the number of seats we have open in Austin ISD, it's well over 20,000 seats, right? So much larger than the Moody Theater. That's how many seats we have open. And they're not all, necessarily available to where you can make simple decisions and just consolidate. It doesn't really work that way. You have lots of areas in Austin where you're 75% utilized or 85% utilized, and that difference multiplied by 116 is really what gets you the 25,000, 24,000 plus seats. And so when we look at areas of Austin, we look truly at areas. It's not a specific school and say, this school has this many seats, they can fit here. What we say is, in this part of town, given the geographic area, and I would say in this geographic area, I would use west would be the end of our attendance boundary as a school district, to the south would be the river, to the east, not quite all the way to Mopacan Airport, but probably a little bit, shy of that, and then to the north, just south of 183. That's kind of the area that we're looking at. And we say, okay, collectively between all these schools, we look at how many families live in that area. Because what we know is that transfers come and go. We've seen huge increases in transfer rates and then huge declines in transfer rates. And so if we build out our plan on transfer rates and a principal leaves or program changes, we see huge fluctuation in enrollment based on kind of the culture and climate of the school, right? You have a great combination here, but I've seen, and what we know is that in years past, if something changes, there can be an exodus, and because the students don't live in the area, enrollment begins to drop. And so we really focus on where our students live and where our buildings are. Those are kind of fixed. And then we look at the entire area and say, based on the number of buildings that we have, the capacity of those buildings, we do not include portables in those calculations, and I'm going to tell you why. The reason we don't include them is because right now we have over 600 of them. Well, we had over 600 of them in 2017, representing 1.3 million square feet. That, when you think about the most expensive space to operate and maintain, it's a portable. It's exposed to the air and really all sides, and they're meant to be temporary solutions. In some cases in Austin, they've ended up becoming permanent solutions. We have our newest portable is like 30 years old. We have some that are 70 and 80 years old. And so moving forward, if we kind of use transfers and the number of transfers plus the available capacity in portables, you're essentially not considering 5, 10, 15 years, because these portables, the transfer rates, those are things that can vary and change quickly over time. So the reason Bryker Woods ultimately got on the draft plan was because of the number of available seats and the movement between the schools, recognizing that there are schools that have capacity that are larger. When you think about the age of those schools and what they can essentially absorb, we needed to figure out how to identify the number of seats to pull out. And there's not a lot that Bryker Woods could absorb, but moving the other way, it could be done. And so it was an iterative process. We looked at lots of other schools in the area. It wasn't that we identified one school and started there. It was truly kind of movement amongst the schools. And that's how we arrived at the current draft plan. Is there anything, that's precisely how it occurred. We have other areas of town. I will tell you, I want you to know that there are other areas of town. I would argue that Sanchez, Zavala, Go Valley, and Ortega are kind of in a similar situation where there are just a surplus of seats, over 2,000 seats that are surplus. And whatever you do with one school impacts the other school, and there are different elements. One's historic. And so that is the process we go through. We get feedback, we refine, we adjust. But right now, it's really a function of what can be moved where, knowing that we just don't have schools that are 40% utilized in the area. We have lots of schools that have 70%, 25, 65%, and so on and so forth. Go ahead. I don't want to take all the time.
No, it's all good. Thank you so much for that. We have 6 questions. As Melissa mentioned, we've talked to you all through polling. We've talked to the community around us. We have 6 questions that we shared with Matthias yesterday evening, so that I'm sure you perhaps didn't have a chance to review them, but it shouldn't be surprising questions. And the first question that I wanted to focus on is to dig a bit more into your comments around enrollment and capacity. We've conducted our own survey of families coming into Bryker Woods and have confirmed with the developers building high-density housing nearby, including the Grove, the new housing coming in Rosedale, the Rosedale school site, and townhomes on Medical Parkway, just around the corner from me in Rosedale, that this will have a huge impact on future enrollment, impact that we haven't seen reflected in the data. Additionally, we've heard from families and staff at Cassis and Matthews that they do not have adequate capacity to accommodate our students. It seems that future projected growth and limited capacity at other campuses could pose a challenge for meeting coming enrollment needs in this part of Austin. However, the good news is that as recently as 2018-2019, Bryker Woods effectively accommodated a student population of 425 students. From where we sit, growth is coming. We are well positioned to receive that growth. Can you explain where growth from future housing developments and tight enrollment of schools in our area shows up in the plan and the kinds of conversations the district is having around this incoming growth?
Yeah, great question. So when we work with our demographer, and our demographer looks at obviously census data, and there's a lot that goes into that, but we look at projections. One of the things they do is they go and have conversations with developers, with the City of Austin's Department of Development, the DAC, and just talk about what projects are in queue, what projects are in development. And that does supplement our analysis. The question becomes I'm gonna use a term that probably doesn't sound very welcoming or loving, but it's kind of student yield is what I would say. It is, if you have these types of units or these types of multi-family mixes, how many students would you expect to see out of those developments? If you have a 3-bedroom apartment complex, you're gonna see a higher number of students per unit. If you have a whole bunch of studios, you will obviously see something much less. That information is very well documented. We use that, we have it. I think right now, and we've committed to going back, we've already done it once, but we'll go back again and communicate kind of what we believe, what we're seeing as what we've been told the yield is. We're happy to look at it again and make adjustments. I think the projections, I'll hand it over to Dr. French as far as the number from that specific development. I've heard the Grove, I've heard a couple others.
I guess my question is, we've spoken to the developers. Have you spoken to those developers as a part of this process?
So me as the superintendent, I have not, but the demographer has. Now, if there are specific developers, what we can do is share with you who we've met with. You can share with me who you're meeting with, bring that together. I want to make sure we have an accurate understanding of what is going to come. I want to also be clear that there are lots of things that people say are coming that don't come, right? And you see that, we see that. So we just have to be really honest about what data we're going to use in our model, assumption-wise. If it's too far out, it's 5 years out, they don't have entitlements, it's not zoned, that's not something we could really rely on. If it's progressed, it's capitalized, and we have the permits to move forward, or it's near that, then you can probably count on that. And then we have to agree on to what the yield will be. And that's really a conversation based on with the developer. So we're happy to do that. I don't know, Rachel, if you want to add anything to it, but I will commit to that. And if I need to, I'll oversee it.
Great.
Yeah, just to add, and I'm sure many of you have already seen it, our demographic report on the website does outline the specific units that are included, and it also has a chart of specific developments that are not included because there's just not enough information yet for our demographers to actually put a number on it. There is one that does affect Bryker Woods, but we've worked since then to understand, okay, how many would it be if that does come to fruition? And so that is baked in, understood in our proposal. And I will also say that we redo our demographic projections annually. We are also building into this every 2 or 3 years. We will be doing a review of our boundaries. And so we're not doing this drastic, painful thing again. It needs to be, as a district, we need to do our due diligence of making small adjustments as these developments come on board. And we are confident that in the surrounding schools, there will be space for students. And so if developments do come to pass, we will plan ahead for them when they become more real and we can make more realistic projections, and we might move boundaries in a few years as we need to, but we do have space in the schools in this area to support that influx. Something our demographer has also kind of shared with us that they're seeing throughout other urban districts and cities that they work with is that oftentimes the birth rate decline is so much that all these new developments don't outweigh it. So even though you do see a lot more units, there's still just less kids.
Last night at the meeting, it was suggested that the demographer is on your point, making projections, but not that these conversations are actually happening. Can you confirm that what you've done to date are pure projections based on historical data, or that you're actually speaking to the people that are building these things? The medical is gaining feet by the day, right? The Rosedale project is out of the gates. The Grove is very clearly planned and being built. So those feel like very tangible numbers we can get our hands on if the right conversations are happening and not just focusing on historical projections.
Yeah, our partners visited Austin in the spring, and they drove the city. They met with demographers. They met with developers. I cannot, and I will ask them, as Matthias alluded to, like we will confirm which specific demographers they had a conversation with. Sorry, developers. I have no idea what word I said. So we can confirm that because I can't speak to like who did you talk to, but they were boots on the ground for multiple days in the spring driving our city. So they have done their due diligence as much as they could at the time. But
I think we're good. And the fact that Matthias said that he would move forward with that, I trust that. So, all right, let's move on to the data. Or lack thereof, or the integrity around the data. Our community spent a great deal of time getting familiar with the data rubric. We were consistently confused by the description of our building's capacity, which factored in programs and classroom types we don't have, like pre-K3, early childhood classrooms, and a makerspace. They also, by our count, miscalculated the count of the general education classrooms and the quality of the building. We determined that that was also inaccurate. It makes more sense to us to understand our building's capacity based on current usage. Again, many of us have experience with this campus serving over 400 students. When my oldest daughter was here, we had 400 students and it was perfectly fine. Could you explain to us where our current usage should look different, or why programs we don't have should be factored into our capacity?
Yeah, so I'll start and then hand it off to Rachel. Some of this is tied to the portable comment that I made earlier. That's the honest truth, right? So Bryker Woods, Barton Hills, there are certain portables that have been placed and have kind of just grown to be part of the school. But they're also in the Barton Creek watershed. There are lots of things that kind of keep us from being able to count them as permanent infrastructure for the next 30, 40, 50 years. Now, if there was a significant increase in capacity by some of the means as part of the permanent structure, then that we would be able to count that. But across the board, we made a decision years ago to not include portables because we were actively actually trying to reduce the number of portables. What I'll tell you is that throughout the district, there are schools that are underutilized to a pretty significant degree and have 5 or 6 portables, but they're still filled. And I get arguments that, Matthias, like, we're using up portables. Well, yes, because you have the space. But they are very, very costly. And so that's one thing. So I think if, we can talk about your current operational capacity as you use portables, how we...
The question was around data integrity, not around the portables. I think we understand.
Yeah, okay, so data integrity, let's talk about that. So one of the things that we did is we identified what was the square footage required to communicate that a space was actually conducive for a general education classroom, right? In years past, you could have a square footage of 400 square feet allocated, and then because a principal or someone else deemed that a classroom, that was a classroom. Well, the reality is that there are certain configurations and sizes that we want in our school system, and even though it was used as a classroom, it should have never been used as a classroom. So what we did is we said, okay, each of these spaces within the permanent building are identified as a classroom. We allocate 22 students per classroom, and then we look at the number of kind of services that are being provided to students receiving special education services. And then we say, okay, based on the student population, this 2-to-teacher ratio in these classrooms is going to go down. I think we use, is it 8 to 1 or 10 to 1? 10 to 1. And so that drives down, right, your utilization, because instead of going 22 to 1 in a classroom, we are wanting to ensure that the students who are receiving special education services have designated space in the building. So that ended up being 10 to 1. So
I'd like you to focus on the specific elements
Okay.
of the question,
Okay.
including things like classroom miscounts, programs we don't have negatively impacting our score, and putting us in position through a rubric process that set us up to be where we are today.
I want to remind everyone what the rubric is and what it isn't. The rubric is data on our permanent buildings, how full they are, how empty they are, and we use the exact same methodology for every single school in the district. All our schools use space differently. Some of them are saying, we can't fit this many kids in our building, are you crazy? Others are saying the opposite, same as y'all, like we can fit way more kids, and that is true because we operate buildings based on programs. But for us in this effort, we had to look at programs can change and how we use space can change. So we had to have a standard baseline. And so for every single school, we have a floor plan, we looked at which rooms are above 600 square feet, that could maybe be a classroom, and we count that. If there are schools that have maker spaces, and I, at the time, was told y'all had a maker space in your building, so we did count that. If it's in a portable, we would take that out, and if we did that, sure, it would change your score slightly on the rubric. That is true if you didn't count your maker space. So that is one nuance, and the reason we do that is because we are trying to do more maker spaces. The reason we include spaces that maybe y'all don't have is because we want to have them everywhere. So if we're at a baseline of like what we want an elementary and Austin ISD to have, that is what we use. So there's a certain number of pre-K3 spaces and a certain number of special education spaces that we account for across the board, because in an ideal world, we would have those and they wouldn't be in a portable. And so there are some campuses that they can only have life skills in a portable because of accessible restrooms. We still counted a classroom in the building to serve that population, because that is what really gives us an apples to apples baseline about just the building. So then what we do and what we worked through after the rubric was actually diving into the reality of the situation. How are spaces really being used? We still don't want to use portables long term, but we do look at programs. We do look at like, okay, what is the reality? And this comes into play in terms of, especially if we have schools that are going to receive students. We're making boundary adjustments that you'll see on Friday, because when we dive deeper into the actual programs being offered and that we want to still do them, it actually can't fit the same number as the rubric. And we knew that going in. The rubric was meant to be a standard way of looking at things
I think we can move on from the rubric.
Yeah,
I
okay.
understand it's very nitty gritty. I think the punchline that our community sees is that it was a choice to not include portables in your assessment at the parish of a community school like this. That was a choice that you guys made. And my daughter is going to school in a portable right now, and she loves it. She says it's so cozy. So like, it's a choice, you know, and now we're suffering because of it, but we'll go on.
I'd like to focus on, thank you. Obviously, cost and financials are an important part of this process. We know that closing campuses comes with real financial costs, especially those of ensuring dark buildings, an enrollment decline when families choose to leave the district rather than go to their newly reassigned schools. A team of parent data scientists within this community ran the numbers and found that with an assumption of a 20% student attrition rate, closing Bryker Woods would cost the district $470,000 in the first year alone. We've had the chance to put the report in front of 2 different Texas school finance experts with decades of experience as CFOs and consultants, and they found the report to be solid.
Libby, are you in the room? I know Libby, yeah. And Debbie? Yeah, we did have it confirmed, like two separate.
Cassandra's one of our data scientists. She'll look it up while I finish the question. We know that finding efficiency is a priority for the district right now, but our community is having a hard time understanding how closing Bryker Woods contributes to an effort when it's unclear that it will actually save the district money. Could you reflect on this? And I think very importantly, could our community see your cost-benefit analysis to justify this closure?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing, and this is where it gets difficult, because we are looking at the whole. I mean, that's the honest truth. It's 116 buildings, $1 billion budget. You know, there are not pockets of available seats everywhere that can just be collapsed easily. And so when we think about building our budget and looking at our total reduction in cost, what we do is understand, okay, if a school gets consolidated into another school, you're gonna have a reduction in administrative costs, right? A principal salary, staff salary, and these are the things that are just honestly part of a cost of running a school, right? We're 87% of our budget is staff. And so when you take those costs to run a school and distribute them over the number of students, then what you quickly find is that the kind of efficiency of getting to a larger campus, coupled with the opportunities, not that that's not happening here, but in other areas of town, you kind of have to get to that critical student population to have a full-time, you know, PE or you know, fine arts person allocated. When you get to really, really small student populations, we don't quite have that. Lots of times local communities supplement, right? We know that happens, where the PTA will come in and provide the resources, and that really helps. That helps us tremendously. So back to the budget analysis. I recognize that there is going to be a loss potentially with the disruption of this campus. But I mean, that's the honest truth. Now, as far as campus to campus, we estimate the total cost of a move and a reduction. It's going to be over $1 million. So that's 1 of 116, right? So we're going to show the details campus by campus. We're looking at the whole. We believe right now conservatively it's over $24 million. The one thing that comes up all the time is, Matthias, you're going to end up spending $800,000 on the turnaround plans, or you're going to spend $800,000 on these plans to ensure that we don't introduce any takeover risk. The problem is we're going to spend those dollars anyway, right? Like we have to break that risk, period, if we're going to keep control of our school district. The board has asked for additional details. Our CFO is working through them. In the first draft of the document, we kept it pretty high level in summary form, but we are going to show on the 31st, campus by campus. But we, again, look at the whole, not kind of each individually. So, but yes, if 20% is the assumption at the basic student allotment, then there would be that loss. Our hope is that they don't, our families don't leave, but I understand that is like a potential loss.
Okay, and we'd be happy to follow up with you directly to walk through in more detail the assessment that Cassandra did and that we had verified by outside sources.
Yeah, that's different than the number I heard yesterday that we talked about. We'll talk about later.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the land that we sit on. I mentioned earlier, we have a ton of land here. We have plenty of room to expand. So if we're looking at a 50-year vision for AISD, this should be considered like an optimal opportunity to build on. So the question is, if you move forward with closing Bryker, what would your plans be for the land? We're quite concerned that a sale isn't doable given deed restrictions and the fact that our school sits in a flood zone. We also have concerns about the plans for the nearby Rosedale School turning into luxury apartments. Can you explain what your plans are for our land in the event of a closure?
Yeah, so the luxury apartment piece, do you want me to talk about both parts of it? Because since you mentioned the Rosedale side as well?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so this is something that I hear a lot. I heard it yesterday multiple times. Matthias, why don't you just go sell, all the land and make up the budget deficit? It doesn't work that way. For those of you that understand transacting a piece of property, especially a public piece of property, you're looking at 18 months at the earliest, right? By the time you get through entitlements, you find a partner who can capitalize it, especially based on highest and best use. Right now, with the multifamily pressure that we're seeing in the market, you're not seeing kind of those huge payouts, right? But we go through a process with community. We do not ever start with a real estate value or what we're going to do at any point in this process. That has never come up at any point. What we talk about is, what is our approach if we move forward and determine that a piece of property needs to be repurposed. I'll tell you that what we would do is kind of lean into what we've done and then build on it based on community need. So in 2019, the board, in the last vote that they had, identified different elements they want the administration to explore, really focusing on community benefit. Community benefit was identified at that time as teacher housing, workforce housing, community space, open space, those sorts of things. And so those, obviously with this board's input, would kind of drive the overall approach. We, as a school district, would then work with the community and say, okay, what works in this community? But I will be really honest, there are some communities that say, we want nothing. Just leave it ground, make it a park. Well, that's hard because, ideally we'd want to, monetize it if we could. It doesn't necessarily mean a fee simple transaction, but we do take community input, we make adjustments. One of the things I'll tell you is Pease Elementary School was a school that had been closed, and we heard from the community, keep it active with kids. We heard that over and over and over again. And so we worked with Congressman Doggett's office, they provided funds, and then we actually were able to ink a deal with United Way, and now it's an early childhood center. In other parts of town, we had Anita Coy site. We worked with our community, and it was teacher housing. And so right now, we moved that property into the Public Facilities Corporation, and now it's 600 units. So we would go through a process with the Bryker Woods community. Our trustees expect it, I expect it, our council expects it. That's what we would do. We would not move forward and introduce something without y'all's input. As far as shuttering goes, I get that question a lot. We would still activate the site. We would go through a process. We would still secure it. We would still make sure that it's accessible to the community. We would still make sure that we operate and maintain it. But it obviously wouldn't have the same cost because it's not, loaded and operating as a school. But that's what we would do, and we have evidence of us doing it, and we would do that here. I don't think they want to talk about Rose.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing that because I didn't have the microphone, I just wanted to say, going back to our financials question, would love for you to make a commitment to our community to look at our analysis and take the time to look at what we've put together and how it can impact costs. But I'd like to move on to a question on something you've already mentioned. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think I've gotten that last analysis, the one from last night, the 20%. You said that it was.
We're happy to
20%.
share it with you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Just to be.
I'd like to go to another really important topic that you've already talked about today, and we share your concern about it, which is the threat of TEA takeover. We've heard from several trustees that they must vote on this plan because of the TEA TAP plan deadline, but they would like to have more time. We understand that the TEA TAP TIP plans will require some consolidation and school closures, but for the schools where that is not the case, especially where it's unclear that closing the campus will save the district money, why do we need to consolidate? Please explain why we can't focus on the looming TEA takeover situation and address consolidation and school closure needs at a different time.
Yeah, great question. So what I will say is Austin ISD has a bad habit of not making hard decisions. That's the honest truth. Going back decades and decades and decades, there's evidence that the district did not make decisions that they probably should have. And so I do not want to be the superintendent who just continues to delay and not have a hard decision. I mean, whatever decisions are in our district, whether it's TEA or special education or downsizing central office, like we're going to do it to protect our overall school district. Now, you're right. The consolidations or the plans that are directly tied to the November 20th approval are those that are tied to the turnaround plans. I will say, however, that there are lots of things tied to those. An example of that, if you look at the plan, well, there are some turnaround plans that are directly tied to a program move. And the reason that's done that way is because we're trying to address two kind of challenges at the same time. So though this first school has a turnaround risk and the second school doesn't, the second school actually allows us to create a new opportunity where otherwise we'd have to shutter a school. So you could have separate timelines. What I do not want to do is to avoid a difficult conversation. Consolidations, boundary changes, these things are hard. They take lots of energy and resources within our system. For the last 4 years, I feel like all we've been doing is like fighting tooth and nail to keep us moving. The TA agreed order in 2023, special education, that was the thing that was going to take us over. Y'all remember that? It was horrible. We worked really, really hard. That cost us money. Then you move from there and try to balance, enrollment, and you have to get staff into our schools. At one point, we were, 76% staff. Now we're 97% staff. Attrition rates going in the right direction. We were 22% attrition rates of staff at Title I and Title I schools. Now we're less than 1.5%, 2%. So all these things have been taking so much time and energy from our system. And, a couple trustees last night asked about timing, and they asked me to consider it. I'm hearing that from the community. It is something that we're going to look at. I just don't have an answer. I can tell you right now that it's this or this. But last night it was asked of me to look into that. But I also don't want to avoid, a real decision regarding how, kind of where we are from a budget perspective. That to me is the hard part.
I think that's understandable, and I think from my perspective, because I did speak to TEA, because I'm curious from their perspective of what's going on at AISD, and they said the only interference they will come in on are 3 things: illegal activity by the district, special education out of compliance, and the turnarounds. And so finances have nothing to do with that. And so I think our community is saying this feels rushed. We, because of the finances that we've uncovered, because of the data wasn't correct, like we just need more time to get with you to show you that this does not make sense.
Yeah. So the one thing I would say is, I can appreciate that comment from the agency because of how they're currently engaged with us now. Because we have a TA agreed order of special education, of course, that's the first entry point. Because we're required right now to provide turnaround plans, that would be the second entry point. I don't want anybody to leave here and think that financial risk isn't a real risk. Failing your first rating or introducing financial risk is a very quick reason that the agency will intervene. It's one of the reasons that, unfortunately, Fort Worth is kind of being brought in, maybe perhaps quicker than they were. And so I understand why they said that. We are in conversations with the agency to make sure that everything we produce is in alignment and will be accepted ultimately. But I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that that is not a real risk. Maybe it's not the same level because of how we've been able to manage it thus far, but it quickly could shift. And that's what we desperately want to avoid.
Okay, we can move on. Thank you. Last question, and then we're going to turn it out to you guys. Last night, I think a lot of us watched the board meeting that you had. There was some discussion around potentially Bryker Woods being a receiver school for other schools that are going to be closed down and need to find a new home. You know, we would welcome them with open arms. And so I know it's premature. I know it just came up last night at the meeting, but we would love to hear your perspective on it and you know, how you could see that playing out.
Yeah, so this is, so you are up there with me. Will we all stay tonight and watch the board meeting?
Yes.
Or the work session on Saturday, maybe from 9 to 4. There's lots of things going on. So what I want to be honest about is we look at all of it. Like we as an idea comes from the community, we do test it, we do explore it. There have been things that we've received that have changed our draft plan, and you're going to see that on the 31st. That there are things that we've heard that we're changing that. We're making lots of changes in transfer policies, making changes in some boundaries that we know can be accommodated based on the modeling or the ideas that we received. I did hear that from some trustees as a consideration. That's going to require some work. You know, I don't yet understand precisely, you know, kind of, because we haven't, I mean, last night kind of ended, and then we ended up, you know, through some meetings this morning and then here, so we haven't had a chance to kind of regroup.
Yeah.
I want to find solutions that move the system. It was never about any specific school. I really want our community to know that that's not who I am, that's not who we are. It was really, truly about figuring out how to become more efficient, to identify the resources needed to support the entire school system. And unfortunately, there are geographic boundaries that kind of limit how far you can look in an area. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, that's
okay.
If there are ideas that you have that y'all test and are are not so abstract, you know, then we will do the due diligence. And as we progress that, if it begins to evolve, you better believe I'm going to talk to our trustees about it. But it has to kind of be in alignment with our overall goals, our vision of the overall effort.
Yeah,
that's really what I would say.
And I'm so happy to hear that. And we have spoken to a lot of the trustees, and they have expressed that they are supportive of that type of situation. So really, really excited to hear that you are open to it and that you're really being thoughtful about what to do with Bryker Woods specifically. With that, we are going to open it up to questions from the audience. Emily is one of our transfer moms, so I think, yeah.
Hello. Sorry, I think everybody in this room is tired of hearing from me. And you probably too. I do want to be really clear. Everybody knows I'm a transfer family. Matthias spent time in our community on Tuesday night, right, in the east side. And so I have to say, you've clearly been staying up very long nights. You spent the time, and so I want to start off saying thank you very much, because obviously, yeah. So as an East Austin transfer, District 1, hello again. Yeah, so I was the first one that spoke. So I think today you talked about, right, in terms of the transfers, hey, specifically for Bryker Woods, hey, that we can't rely necessarily on that. Those can come and go. And I understand that, because that plays into what you're trying to fix on the east side in terms of why some families are leaving to go to other schools. I would challenge, though, that the story here at Bryker Wood for why transfer families are here is a little bit different in terms of why our families chose this school versus trying to flee a school from there. Because to be frank, I was looking at the schools all within my area to go to, and those seem just as viable. We chose this, and a lot of us choose this specifically because of where it's located. There is a huge central core here where people work. You are still going to have transfers out of neighborhood schools regardless, and hopefully you'll mitigate that. But I really want to challenge the assertion that, in specific to this location, from an AISD perspective, you are better served from having a school here where you have employers all around. So there's a vast majority. We've polled all of our transfer families here in terms of where they work, and that was the main determinant as to why they chose Bryker Woods. So I always do this. I don't give a question, I give a statement. But I would like to challenge that in terms of when you're relooking at this and you're looking at birth rates and density populations, et cetera, and yes, you want to keep people in your area, Bryker Woods transfers are a little bit different than someone fleeing and say, I want to gentrify East Austin and move my child to West Austin. That's not exactly what the scenario is as to why the transfer families are here. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
All of a sudden, I found myself alone up here.
I'm back.
No, I mean, I don't know if that requires a response. I will say that, not because I don't think that it is deserving of a response, it's just that that is an important point. And I don't necessarily disagree. People transfer for different reasons. You know, and to your point, at the Eastside community that we had conversation, that's one of the things that we as a district have not done well, is kind of manage transfers. But I also recognize that I do not want to sever an opportunity for a student who doesn't have, whose family's making a decision to go to a different school for different reasons, especially if that school, for whatever reason, has kind of a scarlet letter from the school, from the state, right? Because my job is to make sure that all of our schools thrive and the color of your skin doesn't impact the outcomes that you have, right? That's my job. And we're moving the system, and it's going to get there, but at the same time, I understand where we are now, and getting to where we need to be is going to take some time. I appreciate your comment. It's a very good comment. I would like to understand more. I am aware of it. I'm curious to see kind of what % of the transfers are actually tied to that specific component versus just a transfer. But I appreciate you sharing that. I can look into that.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a question from one of our superstar teachers, Colleen Fairbrother, 5th grade.
Oh, y'all stand, sorry. Hi, Mr. Segura, or Matias, sorry. Sorry, it's so, anyways, okay. I'm Colleen Fairbrother, we met earlier. So like you, something we have in common, I went through AISD. My mom taught at AISD for a while, and then Doss, Marcus, and Anderson, go Trojans. Sister, brother went there, my dad went to Anderson, so like, we rolled deep. So I say this, I'm not someone that usually speaks up and out loud, it's very just not my thing. The opportunity that IB provides for our kids is so vital. And I think there's some misinformation, respectfully, that's been out there about it. I myself was an IB student at Anderson, sister, brother, same thing. What it does for our kids, I've taught at Oak Springs and I've taught here at Bryker Woods. It teaches our kids how to think. And so when I was at Anderson, I literally, honestly, at the age of 15, learned how to think. We do something called thinking routines. It's from Project Zero. And it just helps organize our kids in their thinking and synthesizing to be globally minded citizens. I've taught 1st through 5th grade. So I'm a huge proponent of early intervention in tandem, meaning academic-wise and also socially. And this program, it starts at pre-K. If we can have early intervention of cultivating and molding globally minded citizens, I mean, the effect on the world that would have. I mean, I have children talking about perspective. I have children talking about and understanding the ways in which other people live. I mean, the things that it could do. And from another perspective, a branding opportunity. Our 371 followers on our Bryker Woods Instagram, it can only go so far, you know what I'm saying? And I just implore you to realize what a branding opportunity. On the district scale, if it was more so advertised about IB, us being the only IB PYP campus in the district, I think that could be really powerful, and what a branding opportunity and a moment for our district to honestly make some money, like to be honest. But the program, it's just the things it does. And just on a personal note too, our principal, Alicia Hill, like single-handedly, she's gonna be so uncomfortable, but no, this is so important. I've been at Bryker since 2020. She's my third principal. Single-handedly resurrected this campus, brick by brick, in so many ways. Bringing that program here, revitalizing, making this a campus that people want to go to, work at, and be. And I just really think she deserves, hiding probably. And I'll stop talking, but I implore this team to understand the vital nature of the International Baccalaureate program, really, and what it could do if we just magnified it as also a branding opportunity. It just creates wonderful citizens that, because at Bryker, we don't prepare them for the next grade, we prepare our kids for life, is what we do. So thank you.
If I just could say one thing to build on that. You talked about sharing ideas. We've been sharing ideas since the beginning of the school year, and then one of the very first things we shared with you and the trustees and your team was an idea that we worked with Colleen and the teachers, with Alicia on, of really consciously scaling the IB program through an IB Center of Excellence based right at this school.
And the data shows that it does help with enrollment, and the district has an enrollment problem. So do you have any thoughts on the IB and how it doesn't travel if you guys close the school?
Yeah, well, sorry. So first off, incredible. I got to spend time in your classroom. I was very impressed, and even though I only spent like 6-7 minutes in that classroom, it was very impressive. Thank you for being with us as an Austin ISD alumni. I actually have something I want to give you before you leave. So what I'll say about IB is that we understand the value of it. I think that one of the things that's been challenging is how to ensure alignment within our system so that students have a continuous educational experience, right? This kind of goes back to the feeder pattern alignment problem that we're trying to solve as part of this. Because years ago, we actually looked at launching IB at Kasurik Elementary School. And this was kind of 2019, 2018 timeframe. And one of the reasons it didn't make was because, well, there wasn't a feeder school that Kasurik would feed into, or ultimately a high school, that would ensure program continuity. And so it was abandoned at the time. There were lots of other reasons. And then you fast forward, several years, and now Bryker Woods has been able to kind of launch it successfully. And it really takes like a partnership. The community should want to do it. The staff have to buy in, right? And you have to have the resources to ensure that it's viable. Y'all were able to do it with very little help, if any, from the school district. I'm aware of how it came about. I certainly am interested in supporting programs and building them. I do want to make sure that we do not strand students and leave them stranded. In a vertical team.
So just to that point,
yeah.
we have had real conversations with O'Henry. Our principals and the past principal has discussed it, and there is very much interest in having a vertical for IB, and they're interested in collaborating with us on it. And we'd be interested in helping any Title I schools or anyone that needs that help with enrollment, and to create this special program that could really draw kids back into those schools. We would help be a feeder or a school where we would provide that training.
Well, and that's the kind of work that we should be doing. So what you've done and what you all are doing and what others in the school district are doing are what we should be spending our time on. That's just the honest truth. I don't necessarily agree with that, but the challenge is we have been dealing with huge disruption after huge disruption after huge disruption for the last 4 years. I desperately want to get to a place where we're growing, we're stable, we're thriving. I mean, you had three principals, you had 3 superintendents in 2.5 years. Like, that is, like, catastrophic in many ways. And so I just want you to know, like, I am desperately trying to get to a place where I can be there with you in building these systems up, right now the risk that I'm navigating, like honestly, to protect who we are, is consuming almost every moment of every day. And so I want to get there with you. I love what y'all are doing. Trust me, we talk about it all the time. It's not lost on me. It's just, creating the time and the space to do it well. I do not want to do anything poorly. That's kind of my big thing. I appreciate that.
Okay, Dr. Hill, yeah.
We don't need a continuum in IB.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. We don't need a continuum for IB. The primary years program, it prepares our students for education, like no matter where we go. And did you read the letter that my sweet principal sent you about the International Baccalaureate program earlier this year?
It was a while ago, yeah.
It was about a month ago.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was pretty recent. It was about a month ago.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to another question. Do you want to ask yours?
First of all, thank you very much for being here. I don't know if you were here in time to hear the kids sing Bryker Woods Forever, but one of the strengths of the school as a parent is that we are safe and loved, and my kids come back better adjusted every day. One of the things I have missed from AISD throughout this process is any talk about the actual children. Every educational expert will tell you that school closure is disruptive and has educational, financial, behavioral consequences that go through college and beyond. I appreciate that in a complex organization like this, you can't keep the boat on a steady keel the whole time. But I would very much like to hear from you what conversations you have had about actual children, actual parents, and how you plan to help those children mitigate the enormous damage that closing 13 schools will cause. You've sent some counselors after the announcement came out. We have an amazing counselor here, and that was just an announcement. So, I have 2 kiddos. We're all doing this because we love our kids. You love your kids. I just want to know what the thought is about their psychology, their development, how we protect them.
Yeah. So I'll start, and then I'll hand it off to Stacia. She's leading much of this work. So students have to be centered in everything that we do. Right now, because of what we're talking about, it can very quickly seem as though they're not the center. And I want to acknowledge that. And there are lots of adult conversations occurring. But when we think about how harm is introduced into a system and what communities are impacted to a greater degree, we have to think about, as a system, what do families need, what do we need in order to ensure that we mitigate that disruption and that harm as best we can. The one thing that we know is that thoughtful plans that include counseling support, licensed mental health professionals, resource deployment, resources to have our parents communicate with their student, all those things are very, very important, and they can be done in a relatively short window or period of time. And so that is one of the reasons why whatever we do, whether there's an adjustment in time or if we vote, like all these things, you're not going to see me make decisions in the spring semester. Like, I'm not going to do it. So the reason that what we're doing is we're going to have bridge teams that are built up. We're going to have community voice, principal voice in it. One of the things that I think is frustrating for families right now is that we're in this in-between moment where, if I've taken steps and say, hey, we're going to begin to provide these resources, and they're like, no, well, you haven't made a vote yet. And there have been other instances where, they're beginning to already talk, and every community is different. So I'm really trying to follow, kind of have the community take the lead. I'll have Stacia kind of respond kind of directly to as far as the elements in the plan and how we're approaching it, because that's really under her purview. But I want you to know we are very thoughtful and responsive to it, but I also understand how it doesn't feel like it's there yet. And I just want to express to you kind of why it probably doesn't feel that way. Go, Stacia.
Good morning. My name is Stacia Pascal, and I serve as the Director of Strategic Planning and Organizational Effectiveness. And you might be thinking, well, what exactly does that mean? That means that when we are thinking about approaching work, how do we have a human-centered design, and how do we put systems in place to ensure that we've got a thermostat on how the people in the system are doing? And so that is my role. I serve with Dr. Lewis on what we call the bridge team. And the work of the Bridge team, and if you give me the space, I'd like to kind of walk you through how we are supporting the adults, the students in the system. With the Bridge team, we are planning for impact that's happening now and impact that will happen post-vote. That looks like providing a toolkit for campus leaders to utilize. That looks like professional learning that's happening monthly with counselors. That also looks like professional learning that's happening monthly with principals. We are looking at what are morning meeting lessons that could help facilitate conversations, what are one-pagers that we can send home with caregivers and give to go into student newsletters so parents can have conversations, because ideally for us, we don't want any student to attach their identity to this process. This is a challenging process. We as adults have developed a bandwidth to deal with a process like this, but our goal is how do we ensure that our students are separated from that? Another way in which we are looking at supporting students is ensuring that our licensed mental health professionals are a part of this process, as well as counselors in restorative practices. So there is work being done, and as Matthias said, there are different ways in which you'll see it, and it really depends on the level of involvement in the campus administration and what they deem is appropriate for their campus at that time.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're going to have 2 more questions, and then we're going to, out of respect of time, we're going to see what Matthias wants to do. But Teal, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so thank you so much for coming. I'm worried about kind of the overall decrease in trust around AISD leadership because of this process. It's felt at times like, I know that you all are trying, you are limited in resources, you've hosted all these calls, but we often haven't seen any of our concerns reflected in updates to the rubric or updates to the draft plan that came out. I think there is a very real risk that not just students leaving this campus, but they're going to leave all of AISD because of distrust in this overall process. So I know that it sounds like you're open to at least punting a little bit on this so that you can get it right. Could you talk a little bit more about that and make a commitment to really deeply considering not so rashly closing 13 schools and really putting at risk, like sending AISD into an even bigger existential crisis?
So you said all 13. I'm not going to propose that. I want to be clear that, as we were talking about earlier, many of these are tied to turnaround plans. So that's defined by the state. November 21st, we're going to spend all day uploading our documents to the agency, which means the vote has to occur on the 20th. So I'll be really clear. When we lump everybody together, that's not going to be something I'm going to be able to support. That's just the honest truth, because of that distinction. When it comes to trust, I hear you. I am someone who is trying desperately to build a trust-based culture. I have worked in an organization, this organization, in fact, and it was a fear-based culture. I don't know how many people remember what that felt like. I've been here for 7.5, almost 8 years. I know precisely what that felt like. And so I do not want our system to all of a sudden feel as though we are not doing what we can to support them. And me being present, me being transparent and refining and improving the plan is part of building that trust. But there have been lots of things we've been doing over the last 2.5 years that lots of families haven't really seen, right? And I think that's part of the challenge. We've been working very, very hard for the last 2.5, 3 years. And what ultimately happens sometimes is there are 116 schools and each one of them has their own ecosystem. And so before the thing that I want to, I lost my train of thought when you stood up. She's going to say something, so I was
I just want to make sure we get to it.
So, but anyway, no. So as far as committing to looking at timelines, some board members yesterday asked me to do that.
Yes.
I'm going to look at that.
Great.
I am not going to commit at this point what it will or will not be. But yes, that is what I'm going to do.
Well, because something you said is really important. So you all have been doing all this work for the past 2.5 years, and we don't know about it. So why don't you buy yourself a little bit more time and educate us on what you're doing so that we can really believe in what you're doing? Because we want to ultimately believe in AISD and trust you all and feel like you're acting with good intentions. And do this right is what we're trying to say.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right, Max.
Last but not least, sorry, were you going to say something, Matthias? No? So it's my turn. All right. Bryker Woods forever, folks. Bryker Woods forever. Good morning, Matthias. Good morning to the guest from the district, etc., law enforcement. Good to see you. You are welcome to Bryker Woods anytime. I am Max. I was PTA person for 8 years. All the 8 years I was here, fundraising, to fix the bathrooms, to sponsor the IB program, everything. And what I want to say is that I was always so blown out of my mind by community involvement at Bryker Woods. But it goes beyond Bryker Woods. We had line items in our budget for Zavala, $5,000. We went there, we did stuff and everything. And this showed me that with community involvement, so much is possible. The state of Texas is not gonna be there for you. TEA is not gonna be there for you. But the community, if you get us involved, as Teal said, 2-3 years you've been doing this, you don't have to do it alone. We can be there with you. We can have a seat at the table and collaborate with you. We got data scientists. We got all sorts of skill sets in this community that can help it. And I'll conclude with saying, together, so much is possible. But what I've been seeing from my side, when you do a lot of the work on your own, and we're on the receiving side, we see that you ask us to vote for bonds. We voted for the bonds. You asked us last year to vote for a tax increase to address your deficit gap. The very next year, we're closing schools. And we have a larger deficit. So from our community perspective, we feel on the receiving end, and this could just continue. So the ask I'll conclude with, do you think it's possible not only to maybe postpone decisions, but to get the community involved? Bring us in. People do this for free. They will show up, because I'll end with what you started with. We're here because we care about the district. We're here because we love public education. And this can be a force.
Matthias, just so you know, that's actually how he talks in real life. So he wasn't yelling at you.
He's like that all the time?
I usually want to give him a microphone because he just yells. How do you feel? Do you want to continue, or do you want to?
Say something. So I know we're you're not wrong. I mean that's there are other individuals that like just like this all over our school district, and many of them are at schools that don't have the same history that Bryker Woods has. And I do not want to break trust. And yes, I would never ever ask from my own community, the community I grew up in, to do something that I wouldn't have to feel is absolutely necessary, right? In this work, all of it, we have to do something. We have to evolve. We cannot be who we've been for the last 50 years and pretend that we're going to be okay. Everything's changed. You mentioned TEA changed, federal government changed. We're down 2,000 students. We have immigrant families who are not coming, and we have others that have decided to leave, right? That hurts us immensely. And so there are real pressures. I am working through it as best I can. I will tell you that there are lots of opportunities to engage with the community and get voice in and expertise in. Sometimes, and it is focused on an area and not the whole, right? That's just the honest truth. And so as we move forward, I just want kind of that perspective to maybe be considered as we think together. Because that is really my challenge, right? It's 70,000 students, across the district, and for me, I will never ever let, as far as I can help it, someone else control this district. Our board needs to control it, and so I appreciate you. I'm continuing the dialogue. You have my commitment to do lots of things, as we talked about here. There's some things that I can't commit to because there's still the board process. We're engaging. This plan is refining. It is a draft. There was a comment, that's what you took my mind off it when you stood up and kind of startled me. I have a startling complex, I apologize. Seriously, it happens to me all the time. is that we wanted to manage version control. I don't want to go to a community and say, hey, this is what's changing, and then 2 days later tell a different community. And so you will see in the draft different changes around transfer policies, sibling transfers we're approving automatically across the district, rising 6th and 9th graders we're approving automatically. Students that are transferring into a school can transfer automatically to any of the schools that school is being rezoned to. So we're making lots of changes programmatically. We are making lots of changes in boundaries. So you'll see that, but I want to be really thoughtful about how I release information, because if I don't do it in a sequenced way, as many of y'all know, it could send the wrong message or confuse our community, and I don't want to do that. So that's the point I wanted to make, is why you haven't seen a change from October 3rd. I have over 7,000 comments. We've been going through them, we've been dealing with it. These staff have been working so hard. So I appreciate your comments, sir. I love the energy. Come to our board meetings and hang out. Keep me awake at night. So thank you, I appreciate it very much.
So thank you. So just to wrap up, I just kind of want to have some follow-up thoughts, just to say that you have a gold mine in this community. Truly, we are workers. We want to be your ally. We want to be your partner. We want you to think, if I need something, Bryker Woods, let's go. And we will be behind you. I promise you that. And so we just need the chance. We just need the chance. And I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit, and I really do trust you that you want to do the right thing. And if you give us the chance to be your partner, we will not let you down. We will make this the shining star of AISD. I promise you that. So just give us the chance. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you for coming here. Thank you to our community. Thank you to your staff.